This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
They call me crazy cause I'm facing all my giants. They try to scare me into thinking I can fight it. They tell me I should never even think of trying. But that's just me, I'm gonna live out in defiance.
Welcome, Alphas. Thanks for joining us. You might notice that Stacy is still out defending this time her competitive hot dog eating crown in British Columbia. Super producer Holly has prevented us from saying her nickname on air.
You'll have to ask her yourself.
You'll have to ask her yourself. So we have 1 week left, one last week left in this bromance between me and Joe.
It's a mandate.
That's Joe doing the bro down dance. But don't worry, we got a great show for you today. Our guest, David Brown, is a Navy SEAL who shockingly wrote a book. His book, though, and Goliath chronicles his experience becoming the littlest SEAL to climbing the ladder during 35 years of federal service to become a senior executive.
And I'm really looking forward to that. This guy, he's a force to be reckoned with. I'm really looking forward to reading that book myself. So today, September 17th. On September 17th, 2004, 11 days after losing much of my second squad on Labor Day of 2004 to a suicide bomber, I was injured trying to run to assist a vehicle that had been hit with an IED on an overpass. Side note, IUD and IED are not the same thing. And I heard IUD for the third time this past week when someone asked me what happened to me. It was not an IUD. I would like to clarify that. There was no protection. I just got blown up. Having said that, I want to take this moment to say that there's a part of me that obviously got injured, but there's a part of me also that was honored to have been in the situation to where when in this moment when I was capable of being an assistant, of being a corpsman and doing my job, that I was able to be there. And even though we did lose a Marine and an interpreter in that moment, 20 years now. So this is a big time for me, and I'm doing all right. Tango Alpha Lima, my little alphas. I'm doing all right. And so I appreciate you for being here with me today as I try and make light and a little fun and try to enjoy myself. But also, this is productive. I get to take all this stuff that's happened to me in my life and use it for good and use it to help veterans. And so you're giving me an opportunity to take something that's very heavy that happened to me and the loss of a Marine and an interpreter on that day and use it for good. And so thank you for giving me an opportunity to do that. I'm very humbled to be here, and I do appreciate you, Alphas. And here we go. Here's for another 20 years.
I think I would like to just interject to you, Joe, today and just say, yeah, what a privilege it is to be here on this anniversary, and specifically this 20th anniversary. And
hurt-a-versary.
Hurt-a-versary.
A live day. I call it hurt-a-versary. It sounds
it's
just
your day,
dumb enough to make me
I'll
smile.
Call it whatever you want to call it. I also want to honor your friend, that was lost today, and say that what you have been able to do with your life and the service that you've given after what happened on this hurt-a-versary, after what happened on the events of that day, which by many accounts would be what people consider to be the worst thing that could ever happen and the worst day of their life. And I've heard you say that was the best thing that's ever happened to you. And that's a hard thing to hear from somebody who went through that. It's probably a harder thing to get to the point where you can say that thing, but it's something else completely different to say that and mean it. And that's what I see from you every day when you show up, how you bring laughter and levity and joy. but also how you inspire and live with your heart. And so it's a gift that you got, to continue to live, but not everybody lives life in the way you do. And I think it's beautiful to be a part of it on the show, where you get to show people that process that's gotten to you to where you're at, man. So happy hurt-a-versary, or whatever you want me to call it.
Adam, are you talking? You're muted. I'm just joking. I had to make light. You said really nice things about me. I had to undermine it somehow.
Good, man.
I appreciate you, Adam. Love you too, man.
Yeah. Okay, Alphas. Please stick around. We'll be back with former Navy SEAL David Brown right after the break.
Are you struggling with debt, budgeting, or credit score issues? VetSense has got you covered. Get expert advice on managing debt, crafting a budget, and improving your credit score. Our platform offers personalized financial education and up to 3 financial or credit counseling sessions. Don't let financial stress hold you back. Take control of your financial future today. Visit vetsense.org to get started.
All right. Today we are joined by former Navy SEAL David Brown. David, welcome to Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, and shout out to all the veterans. And I got to say, my old school UDT frogmen, we're a dying breed. They haven't minted them since '83.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah, David, we're excited to have you on today. You doing a little bit of research and learning about you before the podcast. You have an incredible journey, starting from boot camp in the Great Lakes to becoming a Navy SEAL, transition to a distinguished career in the federal service, which we want to hear a little bit about that. Also, published author. So really excited to have you. I guess to start, I thought maybe if you could share just a little bit with, kind of what were your initial motivators to join in the Navy and pursuing such a challenging path in life?
For me, it was not this aha moment decision like so many guys are joining the Navy. It was a backup plan when my parents told me I wasn't going to be able to, they weren't going to pay for college. So I was like super into the ocean. I had everything about Jacques Cousteau. I was into all the spy movies, 007. And I just thought, you know what am I going to do with my life since I can't go to college and have my parents pay for it? Yeah. So I said, I'm going to join the military. And so I went to the Coast Guard, and I thought, wow, I'm going to be a rescue swimmer with the Coast Guard. And I conned a couple of my friends to come down to the recruiter office with me. And if you remember back in the day, if you got enough of your friends to join, they would give you another grade going into boot camp.
Nice.
So I was all set. I'm like, okay, all my friends are going to, I got these guys. I'm going to go in the Coast Guard. And then the Coast Guard hit me with we're not going to guarantee you your school to go to swimmer air rescue. And I'll never forget it. A good friend of mine that I conned into going to the Coast Guard with me said, we could be painting gas cans in New Jersey. We don't know what the heck we're in for, right? Yeah. And so that
they tell you that after you had already joined, or was that before? I feel like that's a very recruiterish kind of trick.
Well, I took I did take the ASVAB, but I did not sign the paperwork to commit to the Coast Guard yet. And when they came back and said, well, we can't sign you up for the swimmer air rescue program, that's when I said, well, I'm going to go down the hallway and see what the Navy recruiter has to say. And this is 1979. So, in UDT SEALs, nobody knew what they were. In fact, when I talked to the recruiter, when I saw it in the rating book, he said, no, don't even bother. Nobody makes it through that program. You're way too small. These are all big, muscular guys, and you don't have a chance. Pick something you can actually do. If anybody who's going to read my book knows that lit my fire more than anything. Oh yeah. Somebody telling me I couldn't do something meant, okay, this is the job for me. I'm going to be Jacques Cousteau with a machine gun. And that's what got me to the Navy. It was a total accident. Finding UDT SEAL, which I knew nothing about other than what I read in the jobs book. And my own imagination ran wild. And I thought, this is everything I've ever dreamed of in a job description. I'm going to do this.
Well, I think Joe's got a question for you, but I'll just kind of reflect just briefly because, that's kind of how I arrived in Army ROTC at TCU, which was also, September 11th was my senior year of high school. So definitely felt compelled to do something. But my parents were like, college is on you if you want it. So I was like, well, I do, but like, how am I gonna like cross this divide? And Army
Yeah.
ROTC was there. But the other thing that I love is that like the circumstances didn't necessarily pan out for you like how you originally intended, but it was something far better than like
Yeah.
you could have hoped for. And I love that.
On my end of things, you're not a big guy. You mentioned that, and so you're often underestimated. Especially at the start of this journey to become a Navy SEAL. I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum. When I went in, I was 6'4", 230 pounds, and so I was overestimated. Like this guy can do anything. No, stop. And so on my end of things, and I actually have also read that it can be tough for really big guys too. It seems like there's a sweet spot of being big but not like 6'4". But you've been through this. You can tell me to shut up. I have no idea what I'm talking about. I believe it or not, I am well aware. I don't know what I'm talking about. So, but
Well,
I just I was just going to say, I know it can. What were your biggest physical and mental challenges, and did you notice some of those struggles in other people, and how did you work to overcome those specific things?
Well, you're spot on as far as being on the fringes, whether you're too small or whether you're too big. They make the job at hand. Since we're talking about going to BUD/S and trying to become a SEAL, it's very difficult for either side, and each one has challenges that the other one doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
I can run through the O course like a monkey. I can swing and run and handle my own weight like I was a wrestler in high school. So I had this great weight to strength ratio. And when I saw the other guys, and there's a guy in my book that I talk about a lot, and he was an ensign, and his name was Shibler, and he was a big guy. He was a bodybuilder kind of guy, and he had, and I admit this, I think he had it worse than me because number one, he had to carry the weight, but he was a big target for instructors, and instructors look for things that stand out. For some reason, they didn't find me almost till second phase, and we can talk about my challenges that I had. But he was an officer, so he literally got the piss beat out of him on a number of occasions, and he made it through, and he was a great officer in the team. So good for him. But a lot of guys his size didn't make it, and as far as guys my size. There's really no one comparing in comparison. When I joined the Navy, I was 5'3" and I weighed 110 pounds. Wow. So I showed up to BUD/S, and when I was checking in, they said, okay, they looked at I told them my name. They looked at their sheet and they said, you're AWOL. And I'm like, how can I be AWOL? I'm 3 weeks early. And he said, you're Dave Brown here for Special Boat Unit, right? I'm like, no, I'm here for BUD/S. And he looks down the counter at me. He starts laughing. He's like, there's no way you're going to make it. Guys ring out.
Thanks,
big
bud.
Guys ring out. And he just, but that was from my recruiter to my boot camp to A school. Everybody laughed. Before I took the screening test, they laughed. Until I was the only one who passed the screening test. And then when I got to A school and I told people I was training to go to BUD/S, again, they laughed. You're never going to make it. So here I am. I get to BUD/S and I'm still getting laughed at. So I get into BUD/S, and I got to be honest, I knew nothing. And people, when I tell this story, they're like, there's no way. Everybody knows what SEALs do. Not in 1980, they didn't. I showed up there and I got my ass kicked. We ran the equivalent of a marathon a week in boots through the sand, through the pavement. And quite frankly, I started early because I got there early. So I spent 2 months preparing. And by the time I was 6 weeks in, I had already developed stress fractures in both of my legs. I cracked both of my legs,
Oh my
pulled my
gosh.
groin, and we were getting ready for Hell Week, if everybody knows what Hell Week is. I could barely get out of bed, but we had a timed run on the beach, and I wasn't going to miss it. Popped as much Motrin as I could get, ran out to the beach, and I literally dragged my right leg for 4 miles through the sand, finishing probably 20 minutes behind everyone else. The instructor just looks at me and says, "Sick call." And so I get in front of the review board. Long story short, they look at me. They know they got 2 broken legs and a pulled groin, and they could have rolled me out. They could have thrown me out at the time. But they said anybody could run with 2 broken legs and a pulled groin deserves another shot. And I got rolled back to the next class.
Wow.
And,
you said that was during Hell Week?
That was right before Hell Week.
Oh, okay. But not that
So,
makes it
yeah.
much better, because you're still, months into this.
Yeah, I really thought that was it. But,
Yeah.
what they're looking for is they're looking for the person who is going to risk it all for themselves and for the teammates. And it doesn't matter if you fail spectacularly, as long as you keep going. Even if you don't make the grade, you'll have another chance to make the grade. But if you quit, the chances are you're going to quit when you're in the field and you're in the water or you're in the heat and at night and the bullets are flying and the explosions are going. That's when you're going to quit too. And they can't take that chance.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
I think it's it's a testament through like what you did as UDT and as a SEAL and as, NCIS. But before you had those labels, you just had your internal fortitude, and especially to try and go for those things is hard enough. And then have every single person along the way make some kind of remark or laugh in some kind of way. Like if you didn't have what you already had inside of you, which is essentially a no quit, never give up, attitude,
Moxie.
Ability to take it on. So that's remarkable. Can you talk a little bit about the UDT versus SEAL, and do UDT still exist today, or was that the complete precursor in some regards? And you'll have to forgive me because I was an Apache pilot, Army aviator, and so I feel like I've had this explained before, and all my SEAL buddies are probably going to make fun of me for it. But can you explain it a little bit?
No, absolutely. The UDT goes all the way back to World War II, and when the beaches, clearing the beaches in Normandy, and that was after World War II, going through Korea. They developed more specialties, and we all know what happened with the development of the Cold War and how Southeast Asia was being taken over by the communists. And Kennedy knew that we were going to get into a unconventional war, basically the Cold War. And he needed specialized troops that could go do unconventional warfare. And in 1962, we put out the directive, we need to form a specialized type of warfare group. And that's when SEALs came into existence in 62. And from 62 on up until 83, UDT and SEAL worked together. They went through the same training, buds, everyone went to buds, and then they either went to SEAL team or went to UDT. And the mission basically broke down to UDT was in the water up to the high water line. And then from the high water line in, SEALs took over and did inland missions. Well, they didn't have enough SEALs in Vietnam, and UDT started doing SEAL missions. And so by the time we were into the 1970s, there was a blur. There was no separation between what SEALs were doing and what UDT was doing. And so in 1983, they said, this is crazy. We're just going to combine them all, and everybody's going to be SEAL team. So I started off with UDT 21 doing the UDT missions. And then in 1983, boom, SEAL Team 4. I'm now SEAL deploying to South America.
Was that initial transition kind of hard? I mean, any kind of change and something new can be, but it sounds like, you know, the UDT had a certain mission set up to the waterline, so you still had those skills and abilities. Maybe you were maybe a little bit more capable, because it sounds like during that time period, like they were also doing the SEAL mission. So I wonder if like the SEALs were a little bit lacking at first because they hadn't received the UDT mission set yet, or how did you kind of see that, you know, combining? Was it kind of really natural, or was it, you know, challenging?
Not natural, and really they didn't like it that much. And I have personal experience with that. Someone asked me that question just recently, and I dug through my files and I found this letter of commendation I got from SEAL Team 2. When the transition occurred, they were asked to do a hydrographic reconnaissance and draw a chart. I was a cartographer, so I drew these charts so that the amphibs could come in and miss the obstacles, and they had no idea how to do it. So I went over to SEAL Team 2, and I had to train them how to do hydrographic reconnaissance and how to draw a chart. So there was a learning curve, and if you know anything about the teams, training never stops. You start in buds, and until the day you leave the teams, you're in a rotation to train to do something. So I'm not going to say that, well, they were surprised that they were going to have to do more training, because they knew they weren't familiar with the water mission like
Right.
we were. And, you know, same thing for us. We weren't going to cold weather training. And so we were doing cold weather training in the mountains. So, but I got to say this, back then we were geographically oriented. So SEAL Team 4 was Central and South America. So we focused our training and targets in that area, and we trained for those areas and those targets.
So first of all, I love your story, man. I love the idea of somebody who sees other people's and doesn't take it personally externally, but takes it personally internally to say, I'm going to prove these people wrong by improving myself. And you focus on what you need to do to overcome those perceived limitations. So, you know, I wanted to ask you about, you know, if there was a single moment or a point in your career that you think really that perseverance, that mindset, because you had to do everything they had to do on top of not having that sort of like immediate support system that some people have. I'm sure that it was different for you going in, I was a Navy corpsman. So when I showed up with the Marines, there was a transitionary period where I didn't feel like I quite fit in. Did you have that feeling? Did you feel when you first showed up, there's probably all these, you know, defensive tackle size dudes that are trying to do what they're doing? Did you mesh in with those guys very quick? I'm sure that, you know, about the third run on the beach, nobody cares anymore. It's like, this guy keeps up, he's not getting us in trouble. You know, I just want to know, you know, through, you know, your SEAL training through NCIS, is there a moment or a time that really illustrates that perseverance and determination that you had maybe even an edge on other people for, where that really played out for you?
There was certainly a time in training, which was and I think everyone goes through it. It's the make or break moment in their life. It was for me. And I'm going to back up just a little bit, because when I wrote this book, the book started off as a question, and it's pretty much what you're asking. Why are you like that?
Yeah.
And that's where I had to. I'm a trained investigator. I was a special agent in charge. I put people in jail. I had to get to the minutia of understanding who I was and why I'm like this. I have this, what's I found out is a coined term, pathological persistence. Down to the cellular level, I will not quit. And I was born with it. And that's the beautiful thing. I didn't have to learn it. It had to be revealed in my childhood. And I have some instances where I experienced, and I think that is so key going forward. And people ask me, what does it take to be a SEAL? Well, you need to go through things before you get there that bring out your personality traits that will allow you to do things that you're going to be asked to do. and the instructors are going to ask you to do it. But it's your decision to make to do it, because my thought was I'm not going to die. That was the end result for me. I am not going to die. Anything short of that. And the story is I was a horrible runner. My inseam is 28 inches. All right. So, I was always in the goon squad. I was always getting my ass kicked. I always had to carry these big guys up and down the berms. I don't know how I did it, but I did. Anyway, I'm going to fail a run again. And it was the moment in my life that it was either a make or break. And I actually started crying not because it hurt, because I felt I was going to fail, and I never wanted to fail. And I just had this experience that I was like, I'm either going to catch up to them or they're going to pull me out of the sand dead.
Yeah.
And I had an epiphany, and I just started sprinting up, and I caught up with the rest of the group, never fell behind again. It wasn't that I couldn't run fast enough. It's because my mind told me I couldn't run fast.
You just tapped into something.
I had to get rid of the consciousness of pain and the consciousness of not being able to succeed. It had to be eliminated. There's no failure. There could be no failure. There has to be success. And it overrode all the physical, all the abilities. And I had the ability, because everybody has so much more physical ability than they ever can perceive. And I blew right up there, boom. And I never, like I said, I never fell behind again.
So I
unlocked the door.
I saw this guy who was talking about being in pain, and I loved what you just said, is kind of like what he said. It's been something that's inside me in some ways too. Maybe not down to the cellular level, but for me, he said that the problem isn't pain. The problem is not wanting it. The problem isn't suffering. It's the problem is focusing so hard and putting so much energy into not wanting it. And I don't mean wanting as in like bring it on, but as in you put so much of your energy into being angry or attacked or upset about that thing that you don't realize how much you're leaving on the table. And it sounds to me like you hit that moment when that make or break moment, when failure was right there, that you said, there's something inside of me that I'm not touching. And I don't, and you just found a way to wake that part of you up. And you let go of the fact that fear of failure, you were like, that should not impact my performance outside of motivating me further. And so, not so much a question, more of an observation, that it seems to me like you found that make or break moment for you was you being able to move past and separate suffering from what you were capable of doing, because suffering and focusing on that is a weight that you carry. And when you can let go of that, the human mind and the human body can do some really incredible things.
What you just said is absolutely 100%. There's a psychologist, Alex Lickerman, and he did an article in Psychology Today that talks about why we quit. And every time when we get into situations, we automatically start making reasons why we should quit. And as it becomes more and more difficult, the situation, we create more reasons. And then we start justifying why we should quit. And when those things build up to the point where you can justify, that's at the moment, the most difficult moment, we quit. And so you have got to eliminate that from the way you think. Is the quit part, and this is so many SEAL stories, is never quit, team don't quit. There's podcasts, there's people who talk about it. And you need to get that out of your mind. So the reasons never formulate. There is no justification for quitting. And that is the first key to, I think, achieving things beyond what you're capable of achieving. But but I want to shock you guys. That's not enough. Not quitting is not enough. And why? Why is not quitting not enough? Because there are standards. You have to meet a standard. Just because you don't quit doesn't mean you pass the test. It doesn't mean you finish the run in the time that you wanted to finish or that you needed to. You got to get beyond not quitting. You got to win. You got to succeed. You can't not just not quit.
Well, I think that's such incredible advice. And, not only did you, not quit, but you exceeded the standard as a special forces operator, and then next as a special agent. And so, I'd love to hear kind of about that transition and what was the catalyst, because you had such a storied career and time as a special agent with NCIS, and not the TV show. Although I'm sure you could probably consult for the TV show and have probably some even more compelling stories. But it's this, and it's also this standard thing that you're talking about as well. And I couldn't agree more with that point, because I think also when you look out into the world today, you see a world that says like, well, I can define the standard to whatever I want it to be. Like, those standards that were there before, that was for the other generations. And, now the standards can be whatever we want. And, I don't think that that's true. And I think, to your point, there's standards in place and for a reason. And to be able to be within those standards helps cultivate something inside of you beyond that, just not quitting, where you become so much more than you were before. It's it's part of that self transformation. But yes, as far as that transformation, I'd love to, kind of hear I think it was late 80s you were transitioning from special operations to special agent. What was that kind of path like for you?
I left SEAL Team 4 to go to shore duty. My rotation was up, and I really wanted to get my degree. So shipped me down to Pensacola, where I taught naval aviation, water survival, trying to get the crew members not to drown when they get in the water. That was a lot of fun. And so I had a tour of 3 years there, not quite 3 years, but I needed to get my degree. I finished my degree in 2 years. And here's the problem I had with going back to the teams. I could have applied for OCS, gone back as an officer. But what was going on in 1987? Nothing.
Yeah.
Man, nothing going on in the world in 87. Here I am, a hot shooting, rootin', tootin' frogman, UDT
ready to go. Yeah.
And I'm not making, nothing's going on. We're doing nothing but training. So I changed my mindset. I'm not going to be Jacques Cousteau with a machine gun. I'm going to be 007, and I'm going to be a special agent, and I'm going to really get the bad guys, because there's lots of bad guys out there. And so that was my goal. I applied to the FBI, DEA, and NCIS. And I don't think the ink was dry on my application when NCS called me. They were all over it, and they're like, "Look, we want you to go to Federal Law Enforcement Training Center over there in Quantico, Georgia, or Glencoe, Georgia." And so my decision, to answer your question, my decision was I needed to move on. SEAL training was a mountain that I climbed, and I thought at the time, this is it. I've reached the pinnacle of my existence, only to find out that there was another mountain.
Yeah.
And I went to that mountain, and I'm like, all right, now I'm a special agent, and I'm going to be the best special agent I can be. And I went to NCIS, and it was an exciting time. I did some great fun. I went from Paris Island, where it all begins for the U.S. Marines. You know what? Love the Marines. I deployed with them. They are some crazy SOBs, man.
Yeah. Yeah. As a corpsman, I'm 100% with you.
They're like the cross section of society, right? You got your great ones, you got your crazy ones, you got your good ones, and then you got your bad ones. And Marines go bad, boys. I'm telling you, they go real bad. Yeah. And that's when we got involved. So I won't go into those specific stories, but unless you want me to. But then I went over to Hawaii after a couple autopsies and doing some undercover drug work. And I found out that I really don't like crime on persons. I wanted to be a fraud agent. I want to catch the guys in the suits, the intellectuals. I didn't feel like I was being challenged with street crime. So I wanted to do a more complicated type of crime. And that's what I did in Hawaii.
Oh, cool.
Well, I'm sure Joe's probably got a follow up. I would just say, I mean, I think from your experiences, I mean, they literally make TV show after TV show about like that airs in prime time, like every week. So don't feel anything like you share like uncomfortable sharing, but you know, you kind of signed up. You said, I'm gonna, instead of Cousteau with a machine gun, you know, I'm gonna be like James Bond. But just from a storytelling, you know, perspective, like what's a memorable experience that comes to mind that our audience might enjoy in one facet or another?
Does it have to be with NCIS, or can it be anything?
No, just if the story that popped in your mind is the one I want to hear. So yeah, so whatever. I don't care if it's middle school. You had something pop in your head, and I want to hear it. I want to hear what it is.
The most fun I had, and I would have done the job for free, was when I worked for the Environmental Protection Agency, and we did the craziest undercover stuff.
Really?
You're like, how do you do undercover stuff with EPA, right?
I'm a tree. I'm a tree.
Tell me more.
So we get a phone call. We got the St. Louis. I was in St. Louis at the time. St. Louis Police Department finds a guy throwing 55-gallon drums into the Mississippi. They're going to charge him with littering. So we run down there, pull the guy in, I interrogate him, I find out where he got the drums. We determine that the drums were coming from a large facility that was a collection facility for automotive body repair. So being an EPA agent is a combination of being an investigator, being a scientist, being an interrogator, being a woodsman, outdoorsman, because you got to put all these things together. Yeah. And so I'm calling in the scientist. We're doing speculation, what it's going to be, but we don't have enough for a search warrant. And so I take the guy. This guy was a mess. I mean, I can hardly describe him. His hair is down to his shoulders. He's probably about 45 or 50. He looks like he's 60 or 70 because he's a drug addict. And he's throwing these drums because that's how he's making his money to buy the drugs. And so I come up with this idea. I'm going to flip this guy. I'm going to go in undercover, and I'm going to get the guy on tape, and we're going to renegotiate the deal. And then we're going to go in it. And so I take this big leap of faith. I organize St. Louis Police Department. I bring in EPA Region 7 with their scientists because we know we're going to have to test these drums. And then at the time, my hair was down to my shoulders. I almost looked as bad as him. I was trying to. I didn't shave or shower or anything for 2 days. I rolled around in the dirt. And so we show up the morning, we're going to do the search warrant. And he looks at me, he says, "You look too clean to be a junker." And I'm like, what do you want? Somebody to piss on me? What do you want to do here? And so, we both of us get wired up, and we drive in his piece of garbage truck, and we pull in front of the place. He and I go in, and he starts talking, and he says, we're having a trouble. We can't dump these because we got to get the probable cause, right? We got to get probable cause that the owner knows we're dumping these things. We're not disposing of them properly. So we go through the whole rigmarole, and I get the questions I want in. I get the evidence I need. I get the probable cause that I need. We go outside the building, literally around the corner. I pull my hair back in a ponytail. I take the razor and I shave. I put my EPA jacket on, and everybody swoops in on this guy's shop. And I walk in and I throw the search warrant on his desk. I said, I'm Dave Brown with EPA. Do I look familiar? And he looks at me and he starts shaking. He says, "I've never seen you before in my life." And he pees in his pants.
Oh my God.
As one does.
And so we rush in, we do the sampling, drums all come up hot. This makes national news. We got, Janet Reno. She was the attorney general at the time. The mayor does a press conference in front of this place. Environmental crime is the hot ticket. I get an award, and it was a fun investigation. This all took place within just a few days. So I liked it because it was real police work. It was investigative work. It was undercover work. It was search warrants. It was great. So
tangible end game. Yeah. Where you had, I love it. So, you've had such an incredible career, and in writing and Goliath, like there's no way that couldn't have been such a deeply reflective process. But you said something when you were talking about going through Buds, how you sort of snuck under the radar for a little while. And so it seems to me like that gray man side of you has always been there. You've always been able. I got a friend of mine that I went through basic and core school with, and I will never forget. We were in our last 2 weeks of basic. My chief walks by him, and he is like a super dark, super attractive black guy from Uganda. And how he didn't get noticed, I have no idea. But I will never forget the last 2 weeks of basic. My chief walks by him, stops, turns around, and goes, "Who the hell are you?" And I was like, and from then on, it was his best friend. He was like, the chief was like, "You are my number one guy. I come to you for everything. You didn't get picked on for the whole 6 weeks we've been here. You are my new best friend. I'm inviting you to dinner." And so did that happen to you when you were going through Buds? Once they realized, that you were there, you couldn't sneak through anymore? Did they start picking on you after that?
It's a great story. We got to second phase, and we're in our very first PT session in second phase. We got our brown shirts on. We're feeling good. And I'm where I'm usually at in the back of the line. It's kind of a long story, but being the shortest person, I was always at the end of the line because we always lined up by height, right? So here I am in the back of the formation, and we're down there doing flutter kicks, and one of the chiefs comes up, and he puts his 1 foot on either side of my head. Now in Buds back in the day, there was a no skivvy rule. All right. So not
that
like today
nuts,
where they're using these. You couldn't wear skivvies because the sand would all get caught up in there, and you wouldn't have anything left. Right. So everybody's wearing the UDTs, and just so he walks up, puts his 1 foot on either side, and I'm looking up, and I'm like, "Oh no. And he looks down at me. He said, "Brown, who the F are you? And how the hell did you get here?"
Nice.
And I'm like, "I've always been here, Chief. He says, "Get up and hit the surf." Just for being discovered. So I go up.
Why did you put that weapon together so fast, Gump?
Oh God. Oh, that's funny.
I get back in formation. And I thought, just like you said, now I'm not going to be the gray man anymore. I'm going to be the guy. And I hid behind the big guys, and I tried to avoid the chief for weeks, and he just smiled at me. I think it was an affirmation. He wasn't picking on me. I think it was kind of like, I'm shocked that you're here, is what I ended up feeling like.
So it's like a cool little appreciation thing. So I absolutely, I love your story. I love, I can't wait to read And Goliath. I added it on my wish list, and I want you to know how much it means to me that you've come out to speak to us today and spent your time with us today. And I wanted to ask you one more question. I don't know if Adam's got anything, but I just wanted to ask you, what are you doing right now? What are we working on right now? And is there anything that we can be a part of, or something that we can share to let people know what you're up to?
Well, professionally, I'm retired, but as you know, I've just written a book, and I'm already planning my second book.
Nice.
So
writing's hard. Editing is worse.
I would take a soft sand run over trying to write a book. It's a completely different thought process, and it took me a year to learn how to write in order to start writing. So the process of writing my first book was actually a 3-year process, because writing investigative reports is completely different from writing a book that people want to read. And so it's a learning process, and I had to do that. And with the same dedication, like I do everything in my life, I learned how to write. And I think, and I hope you and everyone else enjoys the book, because it was a very hard book for me to write emotionally. It was very difficult, but that's the only way you can write a memoir, is you have to get down to let's go back to the cellular level. I mean, you need to be raw in how you are and why you are. At least that's the way I felt. So to answer your question, I'm working on a second book. So.
And I love that your name is David too. I wonder if people just took it from your stature and didn't make the connotation that your name is also David. I love it. That's all I had. I appreciate you and the time that you've spent with us today.
It's a thinking person's title for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I love it. I love your story. I love the story of David. And I mean, also myself, like really asking the questions. And I appreciate what you said, that it's a hard thing to do, to tell your true experience down to the emotional cellular level. And that's another barrier to break through, to be able to give yourself permission to go there. I'd be interested to hear like what were some of the ways in which you prepared yourself to go back and get in that mindset to capture that, and then transfer. And you said it took three years or a year to learn how to write, and then you before you kind of find like your writing voice, right? And then you can get into the process of like the output. But yeah, what was that like for you to be able to do that?
The very first version I wrote of the book, it did not capture the meaning of what needed to be. I studied, read a few books, one being The Art of Memoir by Mary Carr. And she really gets down as to, don't write a memoir if you're this, that. If you're not willing to do these things, it's kind of like going through buds. If you're not willing to put it all out there on the sand or in the ocean, don't bother coming here. And it's the same thing with a memoir. Don't bother. And if you can't lay your heart and soul in what you were feeling and how you felt it, then don't bother trying to write a memoir. Write a novel, right? Create fictional characters that you can put those things on. But when you're talking about yourself, it has to be 100% authentic and real. And so, and to get into that mindset, and I'm not a crier, but just typing the events made me cry. That's how, and they still affect me. Even I think about them right now, how powerful it was to go back there and to relive those moments and to try to put that down on a piece of paper. And for other people, because I'm trying to help people, and because other people have gone through what I went through, and they're afraid to talk about it or won't talk about it. And so
I love that. Thank you for that. You have an incredible story, and then you capture the story, and it's called And Goliath, and the listeners should go and pick it up. We really appreciate the time that you spent with us today, walking us through that path and sharing some of the stories with us. We'll have all your links to social handles and links to your website and stuff in our show notes. But what's the best place that our alphas can link up with you and connect with you?
The website is andgoliathbook.com. Or, you know what? It's just like every other book. You can go on Amazon. You know, it's on Amazon.
That's right.
And I have some, I got to have a shout out to the guys that reviewed and the ladies that have reviewed the book so far. Admiral McRaven, who I deployed with. He's a fantastic guy. He's a friend of mine. Remy Adeleke, These guys are huge in the industry. The foreword was written by Chuck Farr. Again, I was with him in class 114 and UDT 21. These guys, even if you don't see them for 20 years, the minute you reach out, the minute you talk to them, it's like you've talked to them yesterday. And I love my SEAL team brothers, and I can't tell you how grateful I am for them.
Brother, I appreciate you so much again. We love having people on here who've lived these amazing lives, and we love sharing it with others. And I think that our Tango Alpha Lima listeners are going to really resonate with your story, and hopefully we can get you some spiked book sales too. But we do appreciate your time, and we appreciate you coming on here and being raw with us and being vulnerable and talking about this stuff. You say you're not a crier, and I never thought I was, but I think I've established at this point that I'm not I'll do it. And I think it makes me feel more complete. So, you being able to talk about these things is, I think is really powerful. So, thank you again for visiting us today. And Alphas, please stick around for some Scuttlebutt after the break.
Talking about suicide is hard, but the American Legion has joined forces with Columbia University to develop training for those who want to learn more about interacting and responding to veterans who may be in crisis. American Legion Be the One training. In the 90-minute class, you'll learn to understand the types of suicidal ideation and 4 behaviors that indicate imminent risk, how to use the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale to determine at-risk individuals, how to identify risk factors and warning signs, and how to communicate effectively with individuals who may be at risk of hurting themselves. Online and in-person sessions are available. Visit betheone.org/training to find a session. Learn the skills that'll give you the confidence to talk about suicide and be the one to save just one veteran.
Okay, Alphas, we hope that you had a great break. And now it's time for some Scuttlebooty. We haven't said Scuttlebooty today. I wanted to say Scuttlebooty.
Well, it's been said. And
that was very dry. That was good, Adam. I like that. It's very insulting without having said anything rude.
It's also been said that election season is in full swing. Have you heard anybody say that? And no matter what
election?
No matter the mayoral election. No. And no matter what side of the fence you land, the next commander-in-chief will have a military veteran as their vice president. Last time a veteran was on the White House ticket was Senator John McCain in 2008. And the last veteran to serve as president or vice president was George W. Bush, who was a lieutenant in the Texas Air National Guard. So Minnesota Governor Tim Walz spent 24 years in the Nebraska and Minnesota Army National Guards. And Ohio Senator J.D. Vance served in the Marines from 2003 to 2007. So the post-9/11 generation of veterans is ascendant in America today. What does it mean to have these veterans playing greater roles in government, Joe?
I'm here for it. And again, no matter what side, I believe that there are people here that have veterans issues in mind. To the forefront of their mind for the first time in a couple of elections. We really got some people here that, dare I say, I went from being very concerned to being somewhat relieved that we've got veterans. We've got people that are willing to get up there and fight for veterans, and that are willing to have these conversations and understand where we're coming from. It's so difficult when you're dealing with a leadership who has no military background to fight for veterans. And the American Legion, I think, is going to have an opportunity to really connect with our upper echelon of leadership here in a way that can really make a difference. And I'm here for it.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. Either I don't know as much about Tim Walz yet, but obviously I've heard, J.D. Vance,
Yeah, he was a teacher too, which is great.
Who was J.D. Vance?
No, Tim Walls was
Tim
a
Walsh.
teacher. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know as much about them, but, conceptually, the fact that, veterans, whether right or left, Republican or
Hmm.
Democrat, will be in the vice presidency. I mean, even just top of mind, like we've talked so much about the challenges within the VA, that's a great place to start. Having an
Yeah.
advocate in there to be able to take on some of these problems with leadership and accountability, and maybe helping reduce some of the bureaucratic things that are there to be able to get to what the veteran needs quicker. I mean, that's what we're all really hopeful for. I think that's like what we're talking about with respect to these gentlemen in these positions is, can you be the representative and help us where we need the most amount of help? So I think, to me, that's the value of having a military veteran as part of the White House team. Exciting to see how it shapes up,
Yeah.
and optimistic for what can come from it. But we'll have the link to the full story from NBC in our show notes.
I'm excited to see the vice presidential debates. I think it's going to play a stronger role in this election than it has in a long time. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. I want some good active vice presidents. Looking forward to it. But a lot of people, myself included, I don't like the two-party system. I feel like it's very constricting. I feel like a lot of times we're stuck, fighting between the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
And it's rough when you have to vote for somebody who doesn't really have a dog in the fight. And so if that's your thing, if that's your mindset, if that's where your head goes, and neither party is your cup of tea, America, we do have another choice. You don't just have to write in E.T. or Pee Wee Herman like people do every time. There's Rocky, a once stray rescue dog and now a service dog in training at Canine for Warriors, is throwing his paws in a 2024 race to the White House. One thing that I'll say is, having a service dog run for president is important. What I'm worried about is if Sully from America's Vet Dogs jumps in the race too, we could really have a knockdown, drag out dog pile. It could be pretty rough. So I used rough twice. I'm sorry, y'all. I try to be better with my puns. I am a dad. So Rocky's journey from stray to presidential candidate began in January this year. Bradford County Animal Services in Florida found him wandering the streets. While he had a temporary home at the shelter, Rocky was at risk of being put down. And that's the unfortunate reality many rescue dogs across the country face. Despite his challenging start, Rocky quickly learned to trust and won the hearts of everyone with his sweet and loving nature. His positive demeanor shined through, leading Safe Animal Shelter in Middleburg, Florida, to take him in on February 23rd, saving him from potential euthanasia. My concern here is also the legality. Do we use dog years when we decide whether or not they're 35? And I'm going to need to see a birth certificate. That's a joke. That's a bad joke. So that same day, Canine for Warriors knew he needed a second chance and brought him in to train for his new purpose, saving a veteran's life. Rocky's campaign policies include compassionate leadership. As a service dog, roof, roof, I embody empathy, compassion, and unwavering loyalty to veterans in need. My commitment to serving our nation's heroes, woof, woof, knows no bounds, and I will bring these qualities to the highest office in the land. Positive policies for all. My platform focuses on implementing positive policies. And for those of you who aren't catching the emphasis, it's not positive, it's positive, which is, I think, 4 times more effective than positive. All right, that wasn't a good joke either.
That. We're all picking up on that.
You're on the edge.
We get it. These are dog puns. Keep going.
Okay, all right, good. That prioritize the well-being and happiness of veterans and all Americans. With my battle buddy at my side, I will be sure to promote belly rubs and ample treats. Consent is important here. Belly rubs without consent is not okay. Let's just clarify. And ample treats, which I am. I don't need consent. You can treat me.
Here's something funny. Just imagine these are Biden's policies.
Oh no!
I will be sure to
moving on
and ample treats.
And ample treats
or
is a basic
Trump's
right.
or Trump's policy.
That's true.
Who-
That's
Whoever
true.
you want to envision. I'm not being partisan.
It's
here.
funny either way. So I promised to work tirelessly to make America, like he's not going to take a nap, whatever. I've seen dogs. I promised to work tirelessly to make America a better place for veterans. I want to see him in the debate now. Support for veterans and service animals. Now, I'm going to be serious about this because I like this one. As a service dog in training, I understand the importance of supporting our veterans and service animals. I will advocate for access to improved care, assistance programs, and recognition for the invaluable contributions of our veterans and their furry companions. I like that. I'm
Nice,
not, I got no
nice.
jokes there. I'm not even going to bark at the end of it because,
That's change we can believe in.
I know. I've seen veterans, men and women whose lives are just improved with a service dog. And it's not just having a dog, which does make a difference. It's having a trained service animal that helps mitigate a disability that makes a big difference. And then promotion on, again, positivity and kindness. I will lead by example and promote positivity, kindness, and love in everything I do. Together, we can wag our tails and spread joy to all corners of the country. And this dog is willing to dedicate a third of its life to this. And I'm all for it. I may be voting for Rocky. What do you think?
I mean, with a policy platform like that, how can you not get behind the
Policy?
dog?
Did you wait? Policy?
Policy.
Pol-
I'm not taking the bait. I'm not taking the treat, I should say.
I'm dangling them out, baby. All right, so we've got links.
Got links?
Yeah, we got
Sausage
links. Oh, we've got links in the show notes for you if you want to find out more about Rocky's policies.
Okay, but when you said, "Hey, we got this two-party system, and we really just have these two choices, and it's
Did I
between
have
this."
you
I
going?
literally thought you were teeing up RFK Jr.
No,
like,
dude.
I mean, and not to say that he's a laughable candidate. Like, we did overlook the fact that there could be a potential where a veteran is not in the White House, and especially the way the craziness is going on.
Yeah.
There's some polling with RFK Jr. like being like well up there. So
I believe in the novelty vote.
His VP nominee is not. So there is a potentiality that not so exciting, but also that's only if you buy into the two-party system.
I mean, no joke though. I think that there's a such thing as a novelty vote, and not to say, I'm not going to honestly get involved in the politics of this, but I think that a lot of the votes that Trump got was just literally like mix it up. What we have isn't working, and honestly, I think that if the Democrats and Republicans don't really show something mature and proactive here, that I think they're going to find themselves seriously as much traction as Green Party and Tea Party, and these people started to get initially. I think there's going to be a real challenge in the next election cycle if something pretty cool doesn't happen here. Like, really, we need good leadership, and we're desperate for it. So, we'll see.
We really do. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle that it comes on. And I think, the important part and what we're trying to, convey here, and I mean, even the legions, is that like you have a right to vote, and it's also an obligation. I mean, I know for me personally, like what I did as part of my service to be able to help ensure that we have the right to vote. But it's even more than that. Like one of the mission sets that we flew in the Apache was to go and provide overwatch in Iraq for elections that were taking place, in the happenstance. Well, one, to be able to, provide, and this was like during the daytime, at nighttime and stuff, and to be able to have a physical presence there and to let any actors know that if they were going to try and do something that, they were going to be received with, equal and proportional force. And so,
And
I
we're
thought a
talking
lot.
Newtonian force too, right? We're talking physics.
So, I mean, I guess like, I commissioned when I was, 23. So maybe I voted for the first, presidential election before going into service. And then it kind of changed my perspective after
Mm,
that to go to this country and see, the effects of war, what it means for these people to potentially risk their lives to go and cast their vote for their country to be able to have a say in a fair election process to be able to determine who's going to govern in the future of their country and potentially putting their life, on the line. And I would say like, here in the US, maybe we've taken that for granted, so much, even the percentage of people that, vote and actually turn out.
yeah,
Um, and it's just the ability to say, hey, this is a freedom and this is a right that a lot of people don't even have, around the world. And we have to go to extremes just to be even able to provide that right. So take that opportunity, left side, right side, Republican, Democrat, independent, you know, are you going to have full alignment with that individual on their platforms? Odds are probably not. But what are the things that are most important to you, and using that right and those freedoms to be able to do your civic duty. And this is very much within the principles of the Legion, even dating back
exactly.
to 1920. During the American Legion National Convention in Cleveland, the organization went on the record urging all American Legion men to become qualified voters. This was before women had the right to vote. So
Which
since
is
then,
wild.
wild that
Yeah.
was just 100 years ago. Since then, the organization has passed countless similar resolutions advocating for Legionnaires to not only exercise their constitutional responsibility to vote, but also to encourage others, to do the same. So,
Elections is, are how our country works. It's how we choose our leadership. And I understand how easy it is to feel disenfranchised from the system because it does seem a bit convoluted, especially when you take into account the fight over popular vote versus electoral votes. But the simple truth is, unless you visited some of these different places that if you just go by strict population, there are entire facets of the United States, the people that feed us on farms that would not be represented. It's a very dangerous fine line. And I'm not saying I have an answer to it. I'm just saying that it is a much more complex issue than a lot of people, I think, realize. And so, I'm with you. I'm with you 100% here. I love that the American Legion has a noted history of encouraging people to get involved and vote. But voting isn't just it. You have a responsibility to vote with knowledge. You have a responsibility to vote and know. I mean, I think we've all been guilty at some point or another of what's the saying, all blue no matter who, and or going down the whole red side just because, not that I'm like blindly voting, but if you don't have an opinion on someone one way or another, it's easy to just pick incumbent or pick the party that you generally identify with. But there are a lot of people that have much more nuanced ways of living. You've got Democrats and Republicans that have served and have done some really, really beautiful things for America. You've got people like Tammy Duckworth who have been very active and have always fought for veterans, despite being, some people agree, arguing that the party that she identifies with is not a patriotic party. And that's just not true. Here we are, we have two veterans as vice president candidates here. And I think it just goes to show that, I think that we're going to find that representation is what really matters here, and finding a way to work together again.
yeah.
And not be so isolated. I feel like that's the secret, is us finding a way to work together, because you can't just have one solution that works for everybody. It's not going to work for the farmers and the people that live in cities. We have to find a
Right.
way to work together.
Well, as it pertains to voting, the Legion's Get Out the Vote program encourages all Americans to register and vote in all elections. In addition, Legionnaires, posts, districts, and departments are encouraged to fully involve themselves in the electoral process. Maybe not a perfect process, but get involved in it. Be a part of it. Be a part of making it better by serving as poll volunteers, poll workers, and by encouraging and assisting others to register and vote. And I think if anybody is looking for Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, or RFK, or any of the write-ins to save everything and fix everything, like you're misguided. That's not the way that it's supposed to be. And yes, this is an influential position within our government that can, make things happen. But guess what? You can be an influential person within your community as a pollster or anything else. So I think the more that we empower ourselves to be those leaders in the communities, to see the change that we want for the things that we want, which is so much what the Legion is about. We don't have to put all that on somebody outside of ourselves. And then when we have these processes to be able to, elect the candidates, that we have, then, get involved with it and be a part of it in the capacity that's right for you. You can learn more about this at legion.org /vote. And we'll have this in the show notes as well.
All right, Alphas. Thank you so much for listening. We love you. We appreciate you. Happy 20-year hurt-a-versary to me and to families of those that were affected. And we sure do appreciate you. You can subscribe to our podcast, our newsletter, or send us mail and guest recommendations at legion.org /Tango Alpha Lima. We'll see you next week.